apparently somebody doesn't want me to get this idea across. Either my app or my ISP are quitting on me as I'm trying to propose this idea that I know not everybody would agree with, and there's arguments for and against. I've been trying to say that tonight's severe weather illustrates a need for good, reliable internet. The nation's information superhighway to be equally provided for everyone as a public service. And unfortunately, for-profit companies don't like to go into the public business. That's not their business model. They can't make a profit that way. And however, unfortunately, the for-profit models, it's been so profitable for them to take something that's essentially in the public air, in the public domain, been actually initiated and started by the public with public money, and they've turned it into a for-profit model with these extreme limitations that they're going to try and charge as much as they want for it, unregulated. And they've made so much money that we are now starting to see trusts form, large, gigantic companies that can now control and corner the economy on their industry. And when that happens, it completely works against the public good for That's why we say, well, if that's the way it's going to be, that that only one company can hold a good or a service for an area, then you are no longer considered to be just a for-profit company, but you are now a utility, and you have to fit in the domain of utility regulation. But what I'm saying, and I don't know what form it would take, but that's to be argued, is that we need to have an information superhighway pretty much available and free to all. Now, nothing is free, I know. And that information superhighway would be yet another thing that either taxpayers would end up paying for, or, I would hope that we could find a for-profit way of doing that, either through utilities, where maybe it's not free, but it's available at low cost for all, and the costs are distributed around. But that really wouldn't cut it, because there would still be people who really important, vital information and access to important, vital opportunities that couldn't get it if it cost even a cent, And so it's an important decision. I think maybe it's time that people need to address it and go, well, you know what, this is one of those things, just like roads and highways and bridges and vital infrastructure, that we should build into the system. And wow. And so man, that car smells like he's burning something, burning up his engine or whatever, going that fast. I mean, that car cannot maintain that speed very long. It smells burnt. It smells like a chemical smell, like that glue that I was using, that epoxy glue. That's what it smells like. But yeah, so in a nutshell, and I'm saying this because I'm hearing people say things like, we need to get information out to people in these rural areas in Alabama and, you know, the South, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. Please tell people to head to their shelters. And I think, yeah, there are places where people are literally left out. And we make jokes about, oh, you know, the tornado barreled through a Alabama trailer park again. But this afternoon in Alabama, a town that starts with the name O. The last I had heard, the death count was 6 in that one town from a tornado. And there were people chasing it, and I could see video of it, and you know, but of course I have access to the internet, and there are warnings put out, but 6 people killed. And I guess you can argue that people will die anyway, because even if you give them that information for free, you can argue that a lot of people have television, and the television is free. And I don't know about that area, because to be honest with you, still in the United States, one of the things that we tried to use to address the issue of people's lack of access to information was that we were going to establish cable networks all over the country and dig and on our telephone poles and stuff, and everybody would have access to information because the cable networks would provide it. And of course that quickly ran into the cost of doing that, and the government doesn't want to get involved in that, so people have to pay for it. And then the cable networks went from something that was supposed to be able to give people in rural areas especially access to important information and television to a completely for-profit model, and we've seen where that went. You know, cable went from something that, you know, at first when they had cable, everybody could afford it, and then they introduced things like HBO and Cinema, or HBO, you know, what's the first one? And oh, that's premium, and pretty soon, you know, in order to get cable, is going to cost you $200 or $300 a month just to have cable. And not to mention, yet if you don't have cable already dug to your house, you'd have to pay for that too, and rent the box. And people who are poor just don't have that. And the thing was the same was with satellites. You know, oh well, we give people access to satellites. You know, after all, the government were the people that really put the satellites up there and paid for it. And a lot of the satellites are government, and you know, people just rent space free. And next thing you know, just like cable, satellites became just as expensive. Plus, not to mention, if you've ever had a satellite like Dish Network or any of these other companies, that, not just picking on them, but you know, you don't want to rely on it during severe weather, because while the tornado might be bearing down on your house or your mobile home or whatever, you're not having any satellite because the rain caused it to fade away. And, you know, continually through our country's history, we've done the same thing over and over and over again. We've said, hey, we need to provide this information. It's vital that people have access to it. It's vital to our nation, our economy, besides. And then we've left it up to like a for-profit model where people can make a killing off of it, off of generally something that was started usually with taxpayer money. And it's like, oh, you know, we built this and we're going to turn it over to Richie Rich so he can make a ton of money off of it. and then we end up with nothing. We end up back in the same place. People who don't have access, who are left in the dark. So, as with everything, we have to look at it as taxpayers as to whether it's a wise investment or not. And by that I say, if we paid for the information superhighway and continue to pay for building and maintaining it, what will it get us in the end? And I think what it'll get us is it will bring a lot of people opportunities who wouldn't have it. Plus, I think you would see a lot of small businesses. There are a lot of people out tonight that and imagine he had a third lane he could have gone down to get around without risking my life and the life of himself and the life of the trucker. Anyway, so I was saying that a lot of small businesses would be able to take root, and a lot of companies would also be able to take advantage of being able to use this information superhighway. I just passed a truck and was making a comment about that. But that truck drives on something provided by taxpayer dollars. That truck probably would not be possible to deliver goods and services across country if that truck had to pay for access. Some would argue that trucks maybe should pay a little bit more, and in a lot of areas they do. But if this road was a privately owned enterprise, you would not. There would be a lot of this country would not be able to go from point A to point B, and that illustrates my thoughts here. That we don't even think about it as part of our economy, part of our infrastructure. It's an investment that taxpayers make every day. And the amount that we use it costs us pennies, if anything. We profit more from these superhighways, and this really is a superhighway. And go to parts of the world that don't even have this. They can't even count on paved roads. That many times of the year they can't move because of the roads are so bad. And I'm sure there's places in the world where they've gone to the road should be owned privately and you have to pay for access to even get from point A to point B, and if you're with you. And I think it's become critical that information is that same investment that we should think about. And there are many reasons, not just because of severe weather. There are a lot of other reasons that we should be able to enable people to take advantage of the same opportunities that a lot of us have. And I would say we take it for granted, but we don't. A lot of us really, it costs us every day to be able to maintain access to our cell phones and our internet, and quite often you'll see I'm driving along, and granted, this is kind of a miracle that we can do this, that we can in a car with a small device. But a lot of times you'll see it driving along and because I hit those areas that don't have any access, usually rural areas, and not too far away. You get out of the city, even places in the city, there's no cell service, there's no information no Wi-Fi, no nothing. And there are people who literally cannot afford internet, access to the internet, in vast parts of this country, and they are not poor. But because they are located in outlying areas, guy on a bicycle, didn't know where he was going. But because they lie in outlying areas, they're the companies that do say they provide the rural internet, quote unquote, are charging them so much for it that they just can't even afford it. It's too much for even people who are in the middle or upper. And there's no relief for them except that through cellular networks, which oftentimes work better than, oftentimes work better than regular cable or whatever. People can get access to, and I'm doing air quotes here because you can't see it, rural internet. And I have one of those devices. I have a device called a MoFi, which is, you put a SIM card in it, and it's supposed to be good even in remote areas. And I haven't tried that. And I've got the thing, but I haven't bought a SIM card because, I'm already paying for internet access, and even that quote unquote, air quotes again, rural internet is not cheap. For good, reliable, fast service, I think it costs. Now, imagine what it costs people to get crappy internet service. I hear that a lot of the people that the only thing they can get is $100 a month dial-up speed, but $100 a month from their internet service provider, which they are captive to. Again, another argument for what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm at my destination, so I got to end it here. So, hee hee.